Well, hello fam. Zach Couples, physical therapist. It's nice to meet you. It's very, very nice to meet you as well. So, what brings you in today? Yeah, I've just been dealing with like some tightness and tension, a lot of places, and I, tried some various breathing exercises, and that stuff, it just doesn't work for me. So I'm thinking I might need to, wear some glasses, break my jaw, get my ears fixed, and do a seance. That's at least my initial plan to see if I can just feel better. Yeah, I completely understand your frustration, and it makes sense why you might consider trying some other treatments for this. Just out of curiosity's sake, when you said you tried some of the breathing stuff and it didn't work, can you just show me what you did? Oh, of course. I'd be happy to show you my breathing exercises. Here, I'll go ahead and do the one that I've been doing. So basically, what I do is, I really squeeze the glutes, because I know we got to do that, and then I dig my heels so I get the hamstrings engaged, and then I bridge up like that. Oh yeah, feel some stuff happening here and a little bit here. Yeah, so I just feel really tight after I do all that. Do you think I should get my septum repaired? I think I see what's going on. I think I know what we can do to help you. Let me just take care of something really quick before we get to this, okay? Cool. Okay, so I think I see what's going on, and this is super duper common with just about anyone who tries any breathing-based activities, and you're screwing it up. There's, in fact, like a lot of different nuances to this that I think if you were glossing over it, which I think is happening, and again, not blaming you, it's super tough when you're trying to figure this stuff out on the internet, or like sometimes people just don't have an adequate grasp on how to coach this stuff. But I'm gonna change that for you today. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over some of the key things that you need to know to be able to get the most out of breathing exercises. And I think if you do that, you might be able to circumvent a lot more of the fancier treatments. So without further ado, we're going to go into each of the steps needed to perform breathing exercises like a rock star, shall we? The first part where people screw up most breathing exercises is with the pelvic component. And spoiler alert, not everyone needs to tuck. In fact, that's really the first thing you have to decide is, are you someone who needs to get a bit better at tucking? Or are you someone who needs to actually get better at pushing the hips backwards? Because both of those actions are going to elicit different motion changes at the pelvis. And some people are not good at tucking, they need to get better at that. And some people need to get better at pushing the hips back. How do you know which of those two things you have to do? Well, I'm glad you asked. You can tell easily which one you need to perform by actually looking at your toe touch. If you are someone whose toe touch looks like this, where you can palm the floor, you notice that your back is very flat, you got very flexible hamstrings, so to speak, you are probably someone who would benefit from a tuck. And the reason why that is because in that situation, the pelvis is generally tilted more anteriorly. That puts stuff on the back side a bit more on stretch. And so you kind of got to flip it and reverse it by working on the tuck. Conversely, if you're someone, when you're performing a toe touch, where you get a lot of rounding through your back, lumbar spine, but you maybe have a limited toe touch, or you notice that the hips don't travel backwards when you're performing the toe touch, guess what? Tucking is probably one of the worst things you can do with your breathing exercises. Because what's going to happen is you're going to end up doing most of the movement through your lower back, and you're not going to get the mobility changes that you want with your breathing exercises. So if that's you, then you actually are someone who needs to learn how to push the hips backwards so you can get musculature on the back side of your body to be more relaxed, and that will enhance your mobility. Now let's go into how to coach each of those components effectively after you've checked your toe touch. Now let's suppose that you're someone who has to tuck. You got to make sure that you tuck, don't suck. And the way you're going to do that is by monitoring the abs and focusing on where you're going to be feeling the tuck occurring. And so we'll use a Lewitt position as a starting point just to kind of get a sense of this. And so the way I coach this for my supreme clientele is I put the hands right below the belly button. Now you're going to feel a certain amount of tension or lack thereof in your abs. In fact, your abs in this particular position ought to be relaxed. If they're not, then you might choose something that's a bit more prone, like either quadruped, because now you can use gravity to get that there, or even something like prone on elbows. Either way. Anyways, so I'm here. I'm gonna make sure that my abs stay relaxed as I do this tuck. And here's what you wanna think about. You don't wanna dig down necessarily, because that's gonna get the lower portion of the hamstrings to perform the tuck. Kind of whack when it does that, and that ends up oftentimes pushing you forward. So just get a little bit of pressure into the wall. Abs are relaxed, and you're gonna think about back pockets going towards your heels, just like so. You'll feel the back of the legs work. In this position, it's gonna be more like a mid to high hamstring. If I did something where it was more hook lying, it ought to be more glute. And so you wanna make sure that's really subtle, like way more subtle than you would think, and the abs shouldn't engage whatsoever. So if you're someone, when you tuck, you go like that, no bueno, my fam. So very subtle tuck without the abs kicking in. Ideally on this too, another way people will screw up the tuck portion of the stack is they'll end up pressing low back into the wall, or they'll end up arching like this. And a lot of times that happens when you do the heel dig or you push into the wall. So big key with the tuck is making sure that you can move just the hips and the pelvis without engaging the abs. Let's suppose that you're someone we've decided does not need the tuck. Then you want to focus on being able to push the hips back. And so with this, a lot of times I'll start a lot of my supreme clientele with an elevated quadruped position. So I got my hands on some type of surface, and then keeping the knees bent, which in this tall kneeling posture you are, you want to think about your rear moving backwards. And as I do that, my torso will bend down just like that. So you should actually see the hips move back as you're in this position. If you get it right, you're going to feel a stretch in the hips. Now, a lot of times people will screw this up by just bending at the waist like that. You see how my hips didn't move backwards? Or they'll arch their back like they're doing the J-Lo thing as they go back. No, we don't want either of those. Here's how you can circumvent both of those. To minimize the arch, I would get a nice subtle reach and a soft exhale at the start. And then from here, if you're having a difficult time pushing the hips back, take one of your hands, put it in your hip crease like this, so I'll use the fingers, and like physically push yourself so you get that sense of what it feels like to move the hips backwards. A lot of times this is a very easy way to ensure that you can get the hips to go back, and then you're just gonna hold position. Now folks, you might be thinking, well, Zach, you're tucking with this person, you're pushing the hips back on the other. I'm not 100% sure when I should do what, or maybe I kind of want a more in-depth assessment to really be laser-like with my exercise selection. And not only that, you might be running through these moves, but then you're thinking, oh man, I could use a little bit of guidance on how to best coach someone into these positions. Well, I got the answer for you, folks, and the answer is Human Matrix, my seminar. If you are watching this in 2022, I'm going to be in Boston, August 6th and 7th for that seminar, and also I'm going to be in Slovenia, October 15th and 16th. Link is in the description below, or you can just check it out at zachcouples.com/seminars. Without further ado, let's go on to the next steps. Now we're going to focus on the breathing piece of your various breathing exercises. The first thing I'm going to touch is the inhale, because a lot of people screw this up. When you do an inhale, and let's just suppose for me, I've decided I'm someone who needs to do a tuck. You want to make sure it's very, very silent. So like no one should hear you. The cue that I give people is imagine Michael Myers from the Halloween movies is very close by. You don't want him to hear you. And so you're going to go like that, very quiet in, like this. Did you hear that? No? Exactly. We don't want any type of noise with the inhale. And the reason why that is because if you're pulling a lot of air in forcefully, you're creating muscle activity. If you create muscle activity, that makes the space that you can breathe into smaller. And so you can't get an adequate expansion action that we need in order to increase someone's available range of motion. And so you want to get that tuck, very silent, quiet in, just like that. Once you've got the quiet inhale, then you want to work on the exhale. With the exhale, there's a few things that I need to see to make sure it's effective. One, you want it to be really, really slow and easy, like so. There's my quiet inhale. Just like that. So very slow, soft, I'm not forcing it. If you get it right, what should happen is if you're keeping your hands kind of right below your belly button, you should feel the lower abs get smaller. So it's gonna come down towards the ground. And then if you've exhaled enough, you're gonna feel the rib cage kind of get smaller. By get smaller, what I mean is the rib cage is gonna kind of come down and in. But you don't want to force it down. That's another common error that people will make. So it's not exhale ribs down like that. So it's soft. There's my silent in again. Exhale. Now, depending on the degree of restriction that you have, I don't oftentimes force or have people focus on getting all the air out possible. You just want to get enough that you're getting a little bit of downward closure of the ab wall and the rib cage. If you go too much, a lot of times what will happen is you'll see the thorax kind of just come down as a unit like that. We don't want that because that's going to limit the degree of expansion that we are going to get on the subsequent inhale. So just focus predominantly on making sure that exhale is soft, slow, easy. Just like that. So we've talked about the tuck, how we want it to be subtle, no abs, or if you're someone who's pushing the hips back, you want the hips to physically travel backwards. We've talked about how we want inhales to be silent. We've talked about how we want exhales to be soft, slow, abs getting smaller, rib cage getting smaller, but you're not forcing either of them. The last thing that people will oftentimes screw up is the reach. And with the reach, what we want is we want it to pace with the exhale. We want it to be slow, and we don't want it to be forced into position. The big key that most people mess up with all the breathing exercises is they try to force themselves into a position or they rush into it, when really what you're trying to do is you're trying to slowly get into position and essentially let your body just kind of slowly morph into whatever action or position you want to get into. And so with that, you're going to get that very subtle tuck. If, let's say I want to do a forward reach, I'm going to go silent in, exhale, and the pace is like this. You see how I'm slowly getting into position at the pace of my breath? A lot of times people will go like this, or they'll crunch, things like that. The biggest key, regardless if you're someone who's reaching forward, that would be someone with a narrower rib cage, so someone who's a little bit leaner, not necessarily leaner, but kind of longer, lanky. They might reach straight ahead. Someone who's a little bit wider rib cage, they might go in this position. But regardless of what reach you're doing, the key is pacing it with the exhale and making sure that the shoulder blades swoop around. Like that. Not forcing it, not crunching, and nothing like that. Pace it at the rate that you're exhaling. There you have it, folks. Those are the major keys that a lot of people mess up when it comes to any type of breathing-based exercises. To recap, the pelvic movements have to be subtle. If you're tucking, you don't want any abs. You're not gonna dig the heels down. You're not gonna push heavily into the wall. It's really just the pelvis moving. If you're someone who's gotta not get a tuck, you're gonna just gently push the hips back, making sure the torso kind of folds forward, not just bending at the waist. With breathing, you want the inhale to be super silent. With the exhale, you want it to be slow, soft, easy. Don't force all the air out. Just get it out comfortably, enough that you feel maybe just a little bit of ab engagement. Maybe you feel the ribs get a little bit smaller. And then on your reaching, don't force into position. Pace the reach at the pace that you are exhaling at, and make sure that your chest stays parallel, you're not crunching. And if you do those things, you ought to be in business. Now, if you really want to learn more about how to coach breathing, among other things, definitely check me out at zachcouples.com. I have a newsletter there that you can go ahead and subscribe to, which you'll get access to a lot of different free material that will help enhance your coaching, among other things. Otherwise, while you're here checking me out on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button and comment below so you can let me know if there's anything else you want me to cover breathing based. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. You've been an incredible, outstanding audience, and I hope that you keep it real but not to the extent when things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.